Man, what is going on, everyone? It's been a minute, dude. I haven't seen you guys since probably I got a copyright strike from and I had to blurt out their names because I'm not even going to mention it and I don't want to give them clout. But enough of that, I'm enough being sad. Apple is actually going to go ahead and release a couple new iPads. Apparently, you know, this is all still rumors and stuff, but what's pretty much going to happen, they're going to release some type of new iPad. So a lot of people are kind of in the middle, in their crossroads. They're almost like, it's going to have a bezel-less design, it's not going to have a bezel-less design, whatever. In my opinion, if I had to guess, the iPad mini 5, the smaller version, this is the iPad Pro, but the smaller version, the iPad mini, I would imagine it having a bezel-less design, only because I don't see why Apple would keep manufacturing a home button, because that's just one more part and one extra thing they have to manufacture versus just the screen itself. But I could totally see them also keeping the home button. I mean, me personally, I don't really care too much about it. I've owned every single iPad mini. The first one was alright, but even the iPad mini 4 I just recently had, it's really not even that bad of a device. I still kind of like the home button, I'm not going to lie. I like Touch ID a lot more than Face ID, and if they're going to put a home button on it, then I guess I'm not really going to be too salty. Like, I still kind of like it. And I made a whole rumor around a video a while ago. The only way I could see them messing up is if they just jack up the price like crazy. That is a pretty big thing, and I feel like a lot of people would be turned off about that. But a humongous thing where they could totally 100% mess up at, and apparently a lot of people are saying this, and it's probably end up going to make a lot of people be turned off by the iPad mini 5, and it's whether or not the screen is laminated or not. Okay, now what I'll show you is, I wasn't even planning on doing this, but I'll do it anyway. This iPad Air 1, the screen on this is not laminated. Now from the screen it actually looks pretty decent, I'm not gonna lie. That's only because I have the brightness turned up all the way. If I go in and I turn down the brightness a little bit, it's still pretty hard to see over the screen. Why do the iPads get so many random things? But I will go ahead and do a close-up of both these screens so I can show you what the main difference is. Now again, it's going to be kind of hard to tell through the camera, especially my camera, I have a small screen on it, but I'm sure you can see through the videos. I set both of these at pretty much the same brightness. And again, it might be a little hard to see, but I mean, for sure, from the naked eye, I can definitely see that my iPad Pro, which is on the right, has a much better looking screen than my iPad Air 1. My iPad Pro also has True Tone, that might have a lot to do with it. But honestly, the difference between a laminated display and a non-laminated display is crazy. So it's kind of different to tell from this perspective. But if I kind of turn it to the side, you can kind of see that there's kind of a little bit of gap between the screen itself and the glass, and it's kind of hard to demonstrate. This is probably the best way I can do it versus something like my iPad Pro, where you can see it doesn't look as pixelated as my iPad Air. Now this is a pretty bad example, and it's really hard to demonstrate it over the camera, but you can kind of sense that, you know, honestly, like a laminated display, whether the same resolution or not, is much better than a non-laminated display. And honestly, more than anything, it would be a humongous step backwards. Why would they go put a laminated display on the iPad mini 4, put a Retina screen on all the other iPads from the iPad mini 3? The iPad mini 2 had a pretty bad screen itself. They did increase that to Retina, but that also had a non-laminated display much like this. But then they're going to remove it on the iPad mini 5. Why would people spend more money on a worse screen? It makes absolutely no sense. And on the iPad Air 1, this is a perfect example. This tablet did not have a laminated display. However, something like an iPad Pro, which you can probably pick up for like less than $200. I picked this up last year for less than $200. You can probably pick it for like $150. Still a very, very good tablet in my opinion. I don't really use tablets all that often, but this is a very good one. This one has a very, very good display, and it's laminated, and it looks very, very good. There's no gap between the screen and the front glass, so it makes it feel like you're actually touching the display, and it feels way more premium in my opinion versus something like a non-laminated, which is on the iPad Air 1. And this is probably the best example. I should have done this first. Look at the difference between this. You can see on this panel, the iPad Air, you can see that it does not look that good. You can see like it does not look good at all. That's the best way I can put it. Versus the iPad Pro, which is laminated, it has a very good display, and you can see that there's no like glass, there's no like gap between them. So you can see this one is all dark, much like a MacBook Pro. This one reminds me more of the MacBook Pro Retina. This one reminds me of the older MacBook Pros, or even like a MacBook Air, where there's a gap between the screen and the panel. So if Apple goes with this one, that's a humongous downgrade. Why are we spending more money on a worse product, you know? And Apple kind of does this sometimes. They did it with the iPhone XR, and I'm praying they don't do it here, man, because they can really either knock it out of the park or drop the ball with the iPad mini 5. And I really like the previous iPad minis. I used to use them as main devices until I switched to an iPad Air, then eventually with an iPad Pro. But I really hope Apple does not mess this up, man. But that is pretty much all I have to add. If you have any questions or you can help relieve this problem for me, leave it down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. But please hit that like button. That'll mean so much. But definitely hit that subscribe button. That'll mean so much more. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.